Okay, I think that we will go ahead and get started. It's noon, so welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for your interest in applying for the Future Ready Iowa Employer Innovation Grant. My name is Kathy Leggett, and I am the future, hey Rachel, I am the Future Ready Iowa Policy Advisor and primary contact person for you on this grant. I do want to do just a couple introductions before we get started, and I pull up my PowerPoints. Hey, I'm seeing everybody saying hello, which is so nice. So anyway, David, could you click yourself on and introduce yourself?
Hello, David Steen. I'm General Counsel for Iowa Workforce Development, and I'll be happy to assist with questions as we proceed through here. And Kathy, I want to let you know Victor Kennedy, our CFO, will be joining us shortly. So he's not on this yet, but he'll be joining us shortly.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so I want to thank David and Victor. As he said, he'll join us. Victor is with our finance department, and we get a lot of questions, around, things that David is the best person to answer, and things that Victor is the best person to answer. So I'm really happy and feel fortunate to have them join us so that they can help answer some of these questions. Also want to thank Molly in the communications. I'm not sure who else is over there helping us, but thank you for you guys being here too. So I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint. We're going to get started, and I'm just going to start going through information. As Molly maybe said before, but I don't know if you heard, if you have questions, put them in the chat as we go through. And then what we do is try and leave some time at the end that Molly will help us by reading those questions, and then Victor, David, and I can try and answer them. If we are not able to get through all the questions by the time we are finished, then we'll keep all the questions that are in the chat. We'll do kind of a document, a question and answer document, and that will be posted on the Future Ready Iowa website where all that information is currently. And as soon as we can get those answered, we'll have that posted. So you can check back there for the questions that were asked, both the ones that were asked and answered, and then the ones that we didn't get to. So anyway, let's just get started. I'm gonna share my screen. Let's see. Okay, and I'm going to think, unless somebody says something different, I'm going to assume this is working fine. So I do this particular grant. I like to start just with a very short overview of Future Ready Iowa, because it is a Future Ready Iowa Employer Innovation Fund grant. Iowa, to my knowledge, is the only state that does anything like this, which I think is really cool, but I wanted to tie it back to kind of where it came from. The Future Ready Iowa initiative is Iowa's attainment goal to have 70% of Iowans in the workforce with education and training beyond high school by 2025. The work to set strategies and things, how would we accomplish it, began back in 2017 with an alliance that was 60 to 65 people from all these stakeholder groups that did a lot of work over 10 months to try and say, what are the strategies we need to do? What do we need to try and put in place to get to this goal? And really recognizing that this goal, it's really, how do we develop those pathways so that we can ensure over time, now and over time, that we have the workforce that we need. And so another reason was because at that point they did research which showed that 68% of the jobs in Iowa would require education and training by high school or after high school by 2025. And then another reason, and I just want to tie this again to then the work that you guys are going to propose, is another thing that we want to address is what's called our middle skills job gap. And middle skills, don't like the term, but just so that's what's used, is those jobs that require up to an associate's degree or up to a 2-year degree for what's needed to perform those jobs. And so that can be a certificate program, it can be a diploma program, it can be short-term training, it can be a 2-year degree, it can be a registered apprenticeship. There's a lot of different opportunities and ways to do that. but the jobs that require up to a 2-year degree in Iowa make up 52% of the jobs that we have here in Iowa. And then you can see 36% are high school. Those would be the 4-year degree or above. And then 12% would be the ones that require a high school diploma or do not require a high school diploma. And from the 2019 occupational information that we have, what we have here is pretty much doing pretty good in the four-year degree or above. 36% of the jobs require it, and we've got that many workers. We certainly have some areas of need within that. Teaching would definitely be one where we have a lot of openings. Mental health, some of the mental health, and there are other ones. So there definitely are areas to fill in that high skill area. But again, here just to show that we have this huge gap in the middle skills job, and so we do have do really focus, I guess, would say, on that middle skills job gap. So just that was your kind of short tutorial on Future Ready Iowa. I'm sure some of you out there could do it for me, so which is a good thing. So here we go. Future Ready Iowa, the Employer Innovation Fund. Just to review the purpose, this is to expand opportunities for more Iowans to earn for-credit or non-credit post-secondary credentials that will lead to high-demand jobs, and to encourage employers, community leaders, and others, education, all community-based organizations to work together in their areas, local, regionally, whatever makes sense, to figure out what can we do that would help us fill these high demand occupations that our employers have. We're certainly looking, it's named the Innovation Fund because we're looking for creative ideas, things you haven't tried before that you think might work. So that's really what we're looking for. The other purpose, which isn't specifically said here, but I definitely want to mention, is that we want to support those opportunities and expand them. And one of the ways that we do that is by addressing barriers. Many Iowans have barriers to getting that education and training. And so the grant is certainly an opportunity that you can use to address those barriers. We've had grants, this will be our third round of Employer Innovation Fund grants. So I'm really grateful to the state legislature and the governor's office for continuing to fund this opportunity. We've had grants that have completely covered childcare, why Iowans got that education and training to get into a high demand job. We've had a lot that have covered transportation. We have had some that have paid stipends so people can get through that education and training in a really accelerated way. There are numerous barriers, and you in your areas know them better than anyone. And that'll be part of the application that you need to identify, is if there are any and how you might be able to address those. So that is definitely an eligible expense. This is a matching grant. So, and I know it gets confusing and we have different, sometimes they're matching, sometimes they're not. So I just want to try and make as clear as possible that this is a matching grant. Grant funds, so the intent is that you as an applicant can request a match to the private dollars that you have set aside or raised to implement this project. It's so match. So the way you want to think about your project budget is the entire project budget is, well, or at least in relation to the application, is going to be what you're asking for your private match, and then the state match, which can be a 1-to-1. So if you can apply for up to $50,000. So if you're going to apply for $50,000 because you have $50,000 private dollars, you're going to ask the state to match that 50. Your project is going to cost $100,000. That's how much the project is going to cost. So down to the first bullet point, this is not a reimbursement grant. And so your thought, I don't want your thought process to be, we're going to spend our $50,000 and we're going to send in our receipts and we're getting reimbursed for that and we're done, because it's a matching. So it's to do that project in total. So as I said, half the expense is covered by private dollars, private or employer dollars. And the other half, or however you want to do that, would be covered by the grant dollars. I'm sorry, I'm going just a little ahead. A little more maybe that I wanted to say about this is, and I think I'll cover this a little bit further too, but you have to plan to spend your private dollars that you're putting up first. So that's the way you want to budget. And if you have questions about that between now and the deadline specifically for your project, I'm happy, you can reach out to me. I'm happy to talk through those with you. But because what you need to do is spend your private funds, then you send in a request for the state dollars you were awarded with the receipts that show us that you spent your private funds on what you said you were going to in your budget. And then the state writes the check and you have the rest of the funds to finish the project. So that's kind of the way you want to set the budget up. So how much is available this time? We have 1.2 million available to match. The maximum request is $50,000. So, and as I just said, that once the private funds are expended, then you send that documentation in and request your state match, and then IWD, if we're all okay with that, and we'll send you your private match. So the private funds, the timeline for this is the private dollars that you're putting up. If your application is approved, you need to spend those private dollars between the day you are awarded and June 30th of 2022. So that private spend goes first, and you have through June 30th of 2022 to spend it. Then you get to, once you do that, if you haven't yet, if it takes you till June 30th to spend it, then you have part of the next month till July 15th to actually get your request in and your receipts in. And then IWD will send you your state match. And then once you have your state match, you have 12 months to spend those dollars. So basically the next year. So you can run a project for a year and a half or so, or even longer if you get those dollars spent. But those dollars spent have the state's dollars need to be spent within 12 months of you receiving them. So what are eligible expenses? Tuition support for credit and non-credit attainment programs is an eligible expense. Wraparound or supporting those barriers, as I gave some examples: childcare, transportation, books, equipment, fees, support stipends. Housing is not something specifically that the grant can cover. And there are others. These are just some of the general ones, but that's where we asked you to identify what are those barriers and how are you going to address that. And then other innovative ideas and proposals that help, so this isn't a be all end all list. And we get a lot of questions sometimes, what about this? What about this? And it really depends on the context of what you're asking for and things like that. So there isn't going to be a complete list of what you can ask for and what you cannot ask for, but we try and provide as much guidance as possible. In regard to what you cannot ask for, you cannot ask for general administrative expenses of operating the program. So I have some examples, and again, this is not the be all end all of any list, but things for this grant, office supplies would be considered one of those general administrative expenses. Marketing expenses are not allowed for our dollars. And then there's not an allowance for indirect costs, like a certain percentage of the grant dollars that would cover, your typical rent, utilities, things like that, overhead. That is not an eligible expense in this grant. But one thing, so again, cannot be used for general administrative expenses of operating the program. Now, this is new for those who have maybe applied before, and I want to explain it a little bit. When we're seeking feedback about our grants, when I visit and I get feedback from the reporting and everything, we certainly try and look at what are the things people recommend to improve the program or make it more accessible, or what are some of their challenges with it. And one of the challenges with this program is because we don't cover any administrative, so to speak, administrative costs. And, it's a balancing act, and I get both sides of that, because you need to pay people to do the program successfully. I mean, I understand all of that, but we also want to really make the best use of the state dollars as possible. And in doing that, so knowing though that I have had people tell me that they can't apply for this grant because their organization needs some sort of support of whoever's coordinating the program to be able to actually successfully do it. So new this time is that you can request up to 20% of the grant dollars to support the cost, and I'm going to say of direct program coordination. So again, I'm going to go back to that 10% of overhead, that type of stuff. That is not, if that's what you put in your budget, that's not going to be funded. And you will need to be able to be very specific in the budget narrative about why you need this 20%. And it's going to need to be, it's because we anticipate, X number of hours at this wage to ensure that this program is successful. This person needs to do whatever duties. So, and we also, get feedback, and we want to support new innovative programs. We get feedback that starting a new program requires more time because you have to get some things in place. So it's that type that we are going to at least look at as an eligible expense this time with the Innovation Fund. But please, if you don't need this to be able to apply or to successfully do your program, don't request it, because we want to make the dollars go as far as we can with and support as many initiatives as we can. So again, program specific direct program coordination for the effort that you are proposing is what could be considered as an eligible expense. All right. What can be used to meet the organizational match? Again, just want to reiterate this: private or employer dollars. The grant cannot match state or federal funds. They have to be private or employer dollars. In-kind funds or efforts cannot be used as an organizational match. And this includes dollars to pay current employees. So if if you're using something that you always business as usual, pay this person to match, that's not going to qualify. So we're looking for new investment, ready to use, that type of thing. So, and I know sometimes we get specific questions based on, but there's money from a donation to do that. And those would be things that we just have to work through with legal and finance to see if it's eligible. So in general, these are your general guidelines. Okay, so you do have to, as part of your application, include some proof that those private or employer funds are available and ready to be used. So the documentation that is requested is proof or is an official statement from an FDIC insured financial institution that is holding the funds that shows that you have those funds. And if you don't have that, then an affidavit from a certified public accountant that says you have the existence of those funds. And so you need to have one of those things to send in and to upload with your application. It's very important because when applications come in, if you are missing that, then that's immediately going to disqualify you from consideration. So if you have questions about that, let us know, but just know that that is an important part of the application. And then again, I just wanted to reiterate that applicants need to spend all those private funds first before they can request their state match. So who's eligible to apply? Employers, employer consortiums, community organizations, or other entities that are in good standing. So it's pretty wide open who can apply. We encourage you to cultivate partnerships, because just from all of the successes and things that we've seen across the state, partnerships really work well. And especially when you're trying to address barriers of individuals, and I'm not saying that there aren't, if you don't have a partnership, don't apply, because certainly do, but we certainly do encourage partnerships to, one place is good at this, one place is good at this. Can you bring them together and make an even better opportunity for our Iowans? So, so just wanted to point that out. Now, again, I just want to go over the timeline. Once you're awarded, and I'll say, people I know want to know when we will announce the awards. The deadline right now is December 17th. When will we announce the awards? I can't tell you for sure. We have to get time to score them and do all of that. My hope is, and this is totally just a hope, is that at the latest, it would be January 15th. I really hope the first week in January, if not before, but I just don't have a specific date to tell you. But as soon as you are awarded, then you start spending your private dollars. And again, you spend those first by June 30th. Then you submit your receipts either before that. Some people might be able to spend it in 2 months, then submit your receipts and get your state match. For others, you have to submit those receipts and request for funding by July 15th. And then you have 12 months after that to spend the state dollars. And then we'll be requesting, your documentation to show that. So some key points, I just wanted to reiterate again, that this is a matching grant, that the priorities include increasing opportunities for Iowans related to high demand jobs, to address barriers for Iowans, to accelerate opportunities. So is there a way we can support people getting the training that they need faster and into the workforce, and partnering with employers? It's the Employer Innovation Fund. So if you are a nonprofit, community-based organization or an educational entity, we're looking for you to be partnering with employers to help meet their needs. In relation to high demand jobs, there is a part in the application where you need to share some data or some information that says or demonstrates why the program or the project you're proposing helps or is connected to a high demand job or occupation. That does not have to be a high demand job that's on our last dollar scholarship list or a particular list. What we're looking for there, because there may be something in your region or your town that, because of the number of openings you have, this is a high demand occupation and you need people. So you can use regional data, county data. And if you're looking for data, our LMI division on the Iowa Workforce Development website has a lot of data, but we can help connect you with that too. But that's what we're looking for. It does not have to be a job on the last dollar scholarship high demand list. But you just have to, you need to put your documentation of why it is. Let's see. Okay. Education and training, again, just kind of trying to define those a little bit. Short-term credentials, credit or non-credit, online, in person, on the job, be creative, addressing barriers. Talked about this already. We did a lot during the pandemic. Well, and we still have definitely an aspect of that. We did, hotspots for people to get the education and training, computers if they needed it, those type of things. And then I already just talked about high demand jobs. So how do you apply? You do have to do an electronic application through IowaGrants.gov, and that's the website there. These slides will be on the grant, the website where you get the grant information after we finish here today. So IowaGrants.gov, it is an electronic submission. You have to complete it electronically. You can't email a type proposal to us. That won't be scored. And then that's the website, the futurereadyiowa.gov/innovation, or just go to futurereadyiowa.gov and click on the Employer Innovation Grant, and it will take you to the page where all of this grant information is available. If you have not been in IowaGrants.gov before, you've not submitted a grant through that, you do need to register. And so I want to encourage you, if you think you're going to submit a grant, to register to do that soon, just so you can get into the application and mess around with it and have time to do what you need to do. We have directions for how to register. It's very simple and it does not take long. And then typically within, I would say, I don't know, I hope it's within a couple hours, if that you have an email back that says, yep, here, you're good to go. Log in and you're ready to get into that application. If you don't, then people usually just let me know and I'll go in and approve you, or I'll try and figure out what the issue is. So online, and then back on the page that I just mentioned, and I think I have a picture coming up here, utilize the appendices that we have available. The notice for funding, the NOFO, the actual notice for funding, I know is very long and it can be intimidating to people. And please don't get intimidated by it. There's just a lot of information that has to be put in there. So, so don't let that intimidate you. Appendix A, called Grant Guidance, is really going to walk you through what information we are going to be looking for when you get into the grant application online. and really spells out what information we want you to share in those in the boxes that you'll fill in on the application. So I think that's a very valuable document. Appendix B is a general FAQ, and again, I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions, and so we'll put those additional questions up answered as soon as we possibly can. Appendix C is a scoring rubric. That's just for you to refer to how many points a certain section or certain piece of information could be worth in the grant scoring. So, so just so you can see, well, this, if I don't have this, then I could lose out on 5 points if this isn't part of my program, which is okay. It's just for your information. The budget is Appendix E. We have to post it as a PDF on the website, so you can't input your information into it. But when you get into IowaGrants.gov, there is a downloadable template for the budget that you can use. And again, if you have trouble, you can just let me know. I'll send you the budget spreadsheet that you can use. There are 2 pieces to the budget. There's the spreadsheet that you complete and attach, and then embedded in the application that you'll do is the budget narrative, where you'll kind of describe the things that the expenses that you have, so that we can just, sometimes we need both to kind of figure out what is being asked for. So anyway, I've got that. Let's see. Oh, there is in the budget spreadsheet, if you look below there is a tab and it says, I think it says directions, but click on that tab because that'll give you a little bit of guidance about filling out the budget spreadsheet. So, so hopefully that's helpful. And then here are just a few pictures. Now this says, and I know it says February 12th, 2021, because this was a picture of last year's website. I'm only using it to show you what it kind of looks like. So, so when you go to the Future Ready Iowa, either that website or click on that Employer Innovation button, this is what you'll find. And then you'll see links to all these documents that I'm talking about, as well as a link there to IowaGrants.gov. Appendix D is your new user registration instructions. So if you want instructions to what you need to do to register in IowaGrants.gov, you can look at that document. I think it's quite intuitive. If you just go to IowaGrants.gov and click, new written register, or new person, or whatever that is, you can, I think you can figure it out. This is just a look at what Appendix A might look like. It's just, again, the information that really is probably going to be asked for in the application itself. And again, Appendix C, just to give you an example, talking about what we're looking for and how many points that might be worth. Here is the Iowa Grants. This is, if you go to IowaGrants.gov, this is what you're going to see. And you can see the arrow there, and it says new users register here. That, if you haven't been in there before, that's where you're going to go first. You're going to input some basic information. Like I said, then it'll take a little bit. You'll get an email back that says you're approved. And then you'll always go through returning users and look for the Future Ready Iowa Employer Innovation Fund grant opportunity. And this is kind of what it looks like when you get in. Again, this is the last year. So, but I just kind of wanted to, so maybe when you see this, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm in the right place. And then when you get in, if you're new, there will probably be, well, for everybody there up in the upper right-hand corner, there will be something that says start a new application or something like that. And that's what you're going to do to get yourself started. Let's see. Yeah, this is kind of a picture of what you'll see in Iowa Grants. Okay, so then a couple other things that I wanted to share is when will awards be announced? I already talked about that. We'll review them as soon as we possibly can and get them out but I'm going to say at least I'm going to estimate that it'll definitely be announced by January 15th. Now, so let's just keep our fingers crossed. That's what I'm going to say, because I think, yeah, anyway. And what are the reporting requirements? So first, of course, you want to get your application in and get funded, hopefully, but I did want to just give you a heads up about what the reporting requirements look like for this if you are awarded a grant. We do try and keep it fairly simple. We know we want you to apply. We want you to be successful. We know that you have other work to do and that this can't be your life. So a year-end report is required. It's required by December 31st. In the notice of funding, there is a section that talks about the minimum of things like that have to be reported. And then you will, in your application, say if you have other key measures that you're going to share. We do send you a template so you know what you need to report. And then we'll send you a reminder. Here's your report template. Send it to the Future Ready Iowa. So we'll guide you through that process. The other thing that we will do this time first with for the first time is once we have announced the awardees, you will be contacted, and there will be a couple of webinars set up between the time you're funded and through that grant period for awardees, contact people to get on there so that we can make sure everybody understands the paperwork, everybody understands the timeline, and answer any questions and help along the way. So that will be part of it. And that's really all I have to share for this section. So I want to go ahead. We have a good amount of time. I want to go ahead and see if we can answer your questions and go from there. So Molly, are you able to?
Yes, Kathy. So we have
Awesome.
We have a few questions in both the chat and also the Q&A portion. So the first question is, in the instance where our industry does not have apprenticeship programs or credentialed post-secondary training, but it requires training and investment in the employee, can the grant be used for both non-college training and wages?
The grant can be used, and I'll ask David and Victor to jump in on any of these. The grant can be used for non-college training, yes. Wages, we do not cover wages in the Employer Innovation Fund grant. Now, there have been some applicants that have successfully utilized stipends, like a set amount for whether it was, the group they're training or whatever, to help get them through, that they can pay, some transportation or some things like that, whatever it is that they need. Some need childcare, some need transportation. So that's been done as in a stipend, which has been eligible. David, do you want to take any else of that?
Well, I was just going to emphasize that, innovation is the key here in this grant. So, if that industry has an idea of how these funds could be used appropriately to head toward the goals of Future Ready Iowa, then by all means put that package together and show us what your idea is, because this isn't really a one size fits all. There's not really a perfect format for this. It's innovation. So show us what your idea is and how it could assist your industry as well as go toward the goals of Future Ready Iowa, and we can analyze the application.
Oh, you went on mute, David, but I think you might have been about done.
That was the end of my comment on that.
Okay. Did Victor, did you get join us? I don't know.
Yes, I'm here. As far as stipends are concerned, if you're going to do a stipend, you definitely want to outline what you would pay that stipend, like what will qualify for a stipend. So is it transportation? Is it like a bonus for completion? Is it for childcare? We can't just, you can't just say, oh, I paid Kathy Smith $500 for a stipend. Like, we would need to know what went towards that payment. And if you did pay a daycare or something of that nature, we would need a receipt or invoice to show that, where that payment went as well too.
Great, thank you.
Okay, next question. It's about private dollars. If private dollars are being spent now, would they be eligible for the match? Or can private dollars only be spent between December 17th and June 22nd?
I'm going to say that they can only be spent between the date that you're awarded and the June 30th, 2022. And I recognize that, that's short time for some people, but again, David and Victor, that's how I understand it.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Kathy. It needs to be new investment. Obviously, you can understand if there's already been investment in a particular project, but it'd be difficult to rationalize a limit if we didn't say this needs to be investment going forward that is then matched. Otherwise, I don't know that there would be any logical way to say, well, this counts, but this doesn't. So it's investment going forward.
Yep, thank you. I did want to say, before we do another question, one point for whatever reason I didn't put on PowerPoint is registered apprenticeships, because that was mentioned in the first question. We do get people who ask, who want to start a registered apprenticeship or, fund that. The Employer Innovation Fund does not fund registered apprenticeship programs, Department of Labor registered apprenticeship programs. And the reason that is because there is other funding available to start up a high demand registered apprenticeship program, and then other funding through state 15B programs, and sometimes, many times through the Department of Labor, depending on the occupation. However, the Innovation Fund can fund setting up or doing some type of pre-apprenticeship program. And it can fund barriers to getting into a registered apprenticeship program. And a quick example I'll give you is one of the first grants that we funded was for an organization to translate their materials into English or into Spanish, because they had a lot of Spanish primary language speakers, and they wanted to get them into the registered apprenticeship program. But in order to successfully get into and participate in the registered apprenticeship program, they had to be able to do it in English. So this was addressing a barrier to getting people into a registered apprenticeship program, and they had high success with that. They also hired a English as a second language instructor to help those individuals. So that's just a brief example. So we cannot fund registered apprenticeships, but we can definitely look at funding barriers to that.
Okay, next question. It is about post-secondary training. How do high schools participate if the training is to be post-secondary?
That's a good question. And I guess just off short, the way I would say that is because it's typically going to be training that would traditionally be post-secondary, like a registered, well, not a registered because we don't fund that, but getting a certificate in a high demand occupation, that's not traditional high school curriculum. And so that's how I would, that's where I think that would fall.
Next question. Can the private dollar portion of the project budget, can it be used for administrative costs?
David, do you want to answer that?
Well, if we're talking for the match, no. I mean, obviously, administrative costs are going to need to be factored in, and those would need to be the private dollars, but those aren't going to be matched by the grant. So I guess I'm not sure exactly what was meant by the question specifically as far as the expense that they have in mind, but yeah, the administrative dollars are not going to be matched by the grant.
So yeah, and I want to add on top of that, and I think, David, this is what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong. So you cannot ask for administrative expenses. Like, the grant dollars you receive from the state are not going to cover administrative expenses, kind of as I defined them. Now, like I said, we added that direct program coordination, but you're going to have to be really specific about what that is and how that relates to your program. If the question that you have is, yep, Victor, I'll have you come in, definitely. If the question that you have is, can we say we're spending $50,000 to cover the administration of this program, and that's what you're putting up on the private side, does that qualify for your match? That is, I'm going to go to Victor and David. The one thing I would say about that is I can't say yes or no. Because there's so many differences between programs and what they need and how they justify. But if it's not new dollars, I'm going to say that's not going to qualify. So I'll turn it over to you guys then. This is really hard to say just a yes or no on that.
So to jump in real quick on
Yes.
My interpretation is that if you have a program that you're doing training and you have staff that are leading that training, that is the type of expense that we would be okay with. Is that correct, Kathy? Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
However, Yep. So for that though, for those types of expenses, you would need to provide like pay stubs and showing a documentation of like hours worked and, you know, kind of defining that. And you'd also want to describe that in your application to us as well, too, what that expense is. The things that we won't accept are, hey, you know, it costs, you know, $500 a month for utilities and our lease payment is this, and we're just going to bucket all that amount together. And we need that part of our expenses covered. That wouldn't be allowed. I'll let David talk about the private side, what they would have to offer up, or if that would be allowable for their match.
Well, I mean, I think, you know, you just mentioned as far as, you know, wages for somebody directly involved with administering this. I mean, yeah, I think that I would consider that separate from overall administrative, but the bottom line is that the dollars need to go toward the actual implementation of the program and toward the goals of Future Ready Iowa. So we're going to have to see each individual, you know, application to be able to tell you specifically, okay, this is going to be allowable, this is not going to be allowable. And I really am hesitant to say, okay, here's the rule of thumb, or this is. But the bottom line is that your application needs to be oriented toward the implementation of your specific program and the goals of Future Ready Iowa.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, next question. I think this is about how to divide up costs between you know, program development and education and training. So the question is worded as, can 20% be used toward the wages of the person going through the program, while 80% has to go toward education and training?
No, the wages of the participants cannot be, that's not an eligible expense. So, and that's where the stipend thing comes in sometimes for people, because they want to pay a stipend to support individuals while they're getting this upskilling or whatever it is they need. But the wages of the participants is not an eligible expense.
Okay. Next question. Can a company write the expense of private dollars to reduce yearly tax liability, or must that go up to $50,000 in investment to come from post-tax dollars? That's how the question was written.
I'm deferring to David and Victor on that.
Okay. I'm not sure I have a great response on that one. I'm trying to kind of wrap my mind around what they're asking there.
We can always revisit it later. It can be on our document.
I would say my email's right there on the screen, and I would say if you want to email specifics, and I can try and see if I can get some guidance from David and Victor, I'm happy to do that.
Let's do that.
A little more information.
Let's do that, because we can be a lot more clear with a little more information.
Okay. The next question, this person is asking if they can partner with elementary schools and or school districts for projects.
Yes. Yes. And if you look in it now, I highlighted the purpose, like this, the purpose of the grant. It said, yep, post-secondary, this and this. But if you look in the notice of funding, there is a list of things that was set out in the legislation as you know, considerations for the Employer Innovation Fund to grant. So it is, I think David, I mean, as he said as well, is if it's going to advance the goals of Future Ready Iowa, and you can find information about Future Ready Iowa on the website, and we encourage you to apply, you know, so yes, I mean, yeah.
Okay. All right, this next question is about wages, and I believe you already talked about wages a little bit, and this is the question. If I wanted a current salaried employee to manage this new duty, but that person did not receive a raise, and therefore a new expense could not be documented, can part of his or her wage be eligible for the 20% project coordination expense?
I think the best suggestion I can say for that is put it in there and make your case. I mean, that's, you know, again, I'm not sure I'm not going to say
Well,
yes or no, because I don't want, you know.
So the case I might make there is you don't incur the expenses for their wages until they've either performed the work or a next pay period has happened. So I would say every time you're paying that person, it would potentially be new investment. So, you know, in other words, none of us are owed wages for our work next month until next month.
Okay.
And so that investment hasn't already been made right now. So I think there's a case to be made that would be new investment. But again, we don't hear us saying on any of these, this is guaranteed to go
Right.
through, this is guaranteed to not go through. You really need to put your proposal together and send it and let us analyze the specific facts of your specific proposal.
Yeah, and the other thing I will add is depending on what you are applying to have covered, if it looks like, and again, no guarantees on anything, but if it looks like by looking at evaluating the application, that the majority of money you're spending is internal or is not participant support, then that's going to be a consideration. So I just want to offer that. So it's not a negative, but I'm telling you, we have had applications in the past where you know, a majority of the money they're asking for is really like more of an administrative or a program coordination expense. And so that's probably not going to get as much weight as one that at least has some participant support expenses or something. But again, that's also, you know, so you make your best application. That's what I think.
Okay. The next question is about the notice of funding opportunity. And it says on the page of the notice of funding opportunity under 6, it's about cost sharing or matching. It says that applicants may request an employer innovation fund matching grant for an amount up to twice the amount of private funds raised. And they're asking, is that an error?
That's an error.
Okay.
Yep. Thanks for letting us know, because that is an error. So I'll get that corrected. It's 1-for-1. Thank you.
Okay. The next question is, can this grant pay for tuition and instruction and books?
Yes.
Okay, the next question, it's a very broad question about previous winners. It says, what aspects, features, or ideas of previous winners have been particularly innovative, and why did they win? So maybe just some examples to
Sure.
help people understand. Mm-hmm.
I think that the example I gave earlier with the addressing the barrier for people to get into the registered apprenticeship program is, I mean, I think that's unique. It accelerates a process. It addresses a barrier. So I think that looks good. I think that short term, depending on the barriers you're trying to address for Iowans, short term, it can be good, because if you struggle with transportation, childcare, all of those things, we want you to get into a high demand job that pays a good wage to help you get out of that. But if you think if it's going to take 2 years for you to get through that program, the likelihood that barriers are going to get in your way is higher than if you can do an accelerated a creative accelerated thing. There was a project funded with one of the coronavirus grants that took the CMA program, and don't quote me on this because I'm not going to have the time frame exactly right, but accelerated it to a full-time opportunity and paid a stipend to support people through that. And they accelerated it to get it done in like 2 months. And they took employees who were at entry-level jobs who wanted to do it, and they were upskilled into this. So I think that's an innovative thing to meet the need and to have people be successful. There was a project where in the Muscatine area where the organizations all worked with the community college, and they did 6 weeks of accelerated training in CNA, welding, and CNC, I think, and worked with employers so that those individuals would have jobs. But they went to the families who receive food, backpacks, or something like that with kindergartners, and said, we'll pay for your childcare, we'll pay for your transportation and this education. And in 6 weeks, you can get into a higher wage job. So I think there's things like that. I think the other things that have been successful are partnering with community-based organizations who have a pool of potential employees and are looking for training and an opportunity, because a lot of times those community-based organizations can support the wraparound services and a lot of those needs, where the employer can support the on-the-job training or, some sort of training, or there's a combination in there. So that's just kind of brief, and that's what I'll stop there. So.
Okay. And this is a question about a specific use of the grant.
Okay.
If an employer wants to, so if an employer would like the grant to cover the expense of water and wastewater licensure and education, could they use the grant for that?
Is that some type of, is that a license for somebody that they would be training? I mean, Molly, you probably can't tell by the question.
That's all they included in the question. So I assume it's the employer for one of their employees to cover. Yes.
I think that you could just email that question to me too, just to, because I don't want to answer the wrong way, but sometimes barriers to individuals getting the high demand jobs or what we're trying to do are the cost of certifications, the cost of licensures, so like tuition, I mean, those are costs that have been covered in previous grants and I think can be eligible. So I can't say specific again to that one because I don't know enough specifics, but that's what I would say in regard to that.
Okay. And this next question, it looks like it deals with a combination of grants. So here's the question. Would grants received from local mental health regions be considered state or private funds? And can they be applied toward the employer's portion?
I'm looking at David or Victor.
Yeah.
For
That's too much. There's a lot of gray area in that. We'd have to look at probably where those funding sources come from.
I'm going to say probably not, but yeah, I agree with Victor. We would really need to have a close look at it, but those would probably be considered government funds that would not be a match.
Yep, and you're likely getting some type of audit by the, so your CPA or whoever's doing your audit could tell you the source of those funds as well too.
Okay, good, thank you. Molly, before you go, oh, sorry, before you go on, I made myself a note here I wanted to talk about too, because again, yes, the goal is some type of post-secondary, something, but again, we're looking for those innovative, what is going to work in today's day and age for people. So internships are another thing that have been successfully funded through this program before. And so again, more information in that NOFO, but so again, be creative and see what's going to meet your needs. So.
Okay, next question. Can the dollars be used to buy equipment that is used for training?
Yes.
Next question. How do you measure the success of training such as diversity and inclusion to meet the grant requirement?
I'm not sure I understand. So that might be one that you want to email me, because I'm not sure if I'm understanding if the proposal is providing diversity and inclusion training, or are you asking how do we measure if the dollars are serving a diverse population? I don't know if you can tell from the question.
That is the information that I have.
Okay, so I'm going to ask whoever posted that to send me some more information to my email, because I'm not sure I understand in to correctly provide some guidance.
Okay. So this next question has 3 parts to it, and it talks about the reference of new dollars. So it says, you have referenced new dollars several times. Question A, does it mean that if we have previously paid for CNA certifications, can we not apply?
No, you can apply.
Okay. And it says, or
But you just wouldn't be able to, sorry, I don't know, but yes, you could apply, but you couldn't say, you couldn't use, say, we've already paid for 20 people's CNA training, so that's our private match. You couldn't say that. It has to be new training. Not new topic, but new training.
Okay. And the next part of this question is, if in the funding proposal, they originally, they were originally funding 10 CNAs, but they wanted to increase that to 20, would that be approved?
If they're saying our private matches, we are planning to pay to get 10 CNAs certified, and they're documenting their need and everything. So that costs $30,000. And so we're going to pay for the first 10. We're requesting we're requesting a match of 30,000 to pay for another 10. Then in generalities, yes, that's something you could apply for.
And then the final question, and that's the hypothetical here, or if we are paying for CNA education, but had not previously paid for their childcare or other barriers, would we use the CNA fee as our portion, the match, and then request the grant for the barrier costs such as transportation and childcare?
Yes, you can do that.
Okay.
You just have to know that, and I'm happy to talk to whoever, you just have to know that the way you would propose it is you have to spend your private dollars first. So, so if you're saying we're going to spend all the money, then you need to be able to pay the tuition money in order to request your match. And I hope that makes sense, but I'm happy to have follow-up conversation. David, do you have, Victor, I can't tell because I can't see your face, but David, do you have something to add to that or?
Yeah, I mean, I think if what I'm hearing is we've previously spent the money, for certifications, that sort of thing, and we'd like to count that previous spend as our as our match, then that would not be new investment, and I don't think that would qualify.
No, correct.
But the investment going forward,
No, it
when we're
wouldn't.
talking about wraparound and that sort of thing,
Yeah.
that's where we'd have the investment. But if the question is, do the dollars spent previously on certification count for this investment going forward? The answer, and again, show us what you're talking about specifically in your application, and obviously we'll have that caveat. But it sounds to me like something that would not be new investment and therefore would not count as the present investment for match.
Okay, is there one more, Molly? And then
Yes.
2 minutes, I think.
So we actually have 2 questions about transportation. The first
Okay.
one is, can this grant pay for transportation for applicants who attend classes and work during their apprenticeship program? So if it's not for the apprenticeship itself, but if it is for transportation costs.
I would make an application. I don't know.
I would say likely if the classes are in some way connected to the same ongoing efforts for a certification or credential of some kind related to the apprenticeship. So there's a good chance that qualifies. And I'll just be the broken record here with we really need to see the exact proposal in writing, but most likely, yeah.
Next question is about paying expenses like transportation. What documentation is needed to cover this expense? Do you need documentation such as a bus pass or car payment, anything that helps for transportation costs?
Yeah, whatever you would consider a receipt for that sort of thing. Not just what it theoretically would cost, but documentation showing, what is spent and, anything that you would typically use in an accounting sense for, as a receipt. And I realize that I'm probably less qualified to answer that question than Victor. So Victor, I'm sorry to step on your toes there if you got something to add.
David, I got all legal questions from here on out. Okay. So I'm joking. So
Victor's
all
gonna
yours.
answer those.
All
Yeah.
yours.
yeah, no, David got it. We would just need something to justify that expense. So, and you'd have like a narrative. So if you're paying transportation costs and that's part of what you want to include for your stipend, you would just document that as part of your budget proposal to us anyway with your grant application. But we would just need some type of support to show what you're paying, when did you pay it, an invoice, receipt. If you're giving them $100 a week or $100 a month stipend for transportation, a narrative explaining like that is what part of your program is, and then dates when those payments were made, and if you could show us proof of like a check image or something like that would work as well too. So every situation is going to be different and unique, but we just need something to support the expense versus a spreadsheet just showing what you guys did.
Perfect. All right, our time is up. I just, again, want to thank you guys for participating and your interest in this. Shoot me emails, and what I do is if there are definitely ones I can't answer, they will go to Victor and David or whoever. So we'll get back to you as soon as we can. And thank you again. And Molly and your team, David, Victor, thank you guys. And we'll sign off.